July 29th, 2019. Patrons file into a busy bar in downtown LA for the start of an always entertaining open mic night. You never know what types of performances you'll get on nights like these.
Chat, if you guys do like karaoke open mics, I don't know if I could get up and sing in front of a bunch of people, but like, I don't know, bro. I know I'm such a terrible singer. I feel like I would just hurt people's ears. A busy bar.
Or what kind of people will grace the stage with their presence. And on this particular evening, patrons would bear witness to one of the strangest acts they'd likely ever seen, and it was performed by a man named Robert Camus.
Voice crack. Bro, you're a girl. Your voice couldn't crack. Like, for a guy, a voice crack is like sudden death. Like, you gotta commit seppuku. Like, if your voice cracks, especially in front of a girl, bro, like, it's over. But like girls, it's it's whatever. It kind of sounds like a cat dying. Oh, nice. Karaoke switch.
Interestingly, Robert has a long history here across YouTube, being featured in what seems like countless videos performing skateboarding tricks with a group of friends.
He was a skater
but on this
boy.
night, Robert was ready to show off another skill of his, as he took to the stage to perform a freestyle rap.
More singing.
Starting out, the performance was, well, a little shaky to put it nicely, which was at least partially to blame on Robert's apparent drunken state. But a bad night of karaoke in isolation is nothing all that noteworthy. In fact, despite the lethal doses of cringe, many would actually view this as a great time, a funny memory, and even respect Robert for being so willing to go up there and just give it a try. However, his performance wasn't quite finished yet, and after fumbling his way through the beginning of the song, Robert's lyrics take an unexpected turn.
They took the mic from him!
The messy video shows Robert as he raps the line, "I killed my bitch and buried that bitch in the fucking dirt," before muttering that he has to leave because the cops are looking for him. It was a bizarre moment to say the least, and despite many in the crowd trying to play off the line as a joke, with the MC even—
Bro, he should have said, "I killed my bitch, buried that bitch in the dirt. She snapped my best friend and it kinda hurt." You know what I'm saying? Like, he's got to keep going. You can't just, like, say one bar and leave. Not him admitting murder? Admitting?
Even saying that it was an Eminem-inspired performance. Others in the audience were more visibly concerned. And as it turns out, they had every right to be.
Listen, don't get me freestyling.
Well, we're inside this bar, the King Eddie bar, and this is where Camus was standing when he did this rap version, and I guess the big question is, was it a confession?
Parked out front of the establishment was Robert's gray Prius, and in the trunk of this Prius was a shovel, along with fresh dirt and fresh blood. Blood that belonged to his girlfriend, Amanda Custer. And coincidentally, that very day, Amanda Custer had been reported as missing after a—
Damn. So this is the bitch he was rapping about?
Neighbor had witnessed Robert carrying her limp body and placing it in the trunk of his car before driving off, only to emerge hours later, alone at this open mic night.
Bro,
in the moment,
he killed someone. He's like, bro, I'm about to go to jail for life, so it doesn't matter how much I cringe or embarrass myself. Let me go to an open mic night. That's for sure what this is.
A bizarre performance was all this seemed to be, but today, many refer to this rap as being an actual confession, and in the end, this footage would ultimately be used in court and lead to Robert's conviction for the murder of Amanda Custer.
Bro, imagine they play that in the court and the jury's like, bro, these are some weak-ass bars, lock him up.
Even though to this very day,
this shit was
the body has never been found. But if the words of Robert are to be believed, then it's sadly very likely that she's out there somewhere, buried deep in the dirt.
Now, if you've seen Amanda Custer, police want to hear from you.
It has been 3 days since Amanda Custer's been seen.
I love this. I follow this one Twitter page called Liminal Spaces. They post all these rooms and buildings that just give you an eerie feeling. Love it.
Remember, people have to learn how to swim. It's great fun though, and something you can do with all of your friends.
During the summer of 2022 in
Chernobyl.
Karei Yosef, Israel, a popular corporate villa had been rented out by a local marketing agency to host a company event. The location was highly sought after due to its large outdoor pool area, making it the perfect spot for employees to unwind and connect outside of their typical working environment.
Nice ass pool.
And on this day, the 21st of July, 50 employees of this company would gather at the party to enjoy the hot summer sun and the cool water of the pool. And by all accounts, the party had been going off without
Yo,
a hitch
Jet, anybody in the cult got a
until
pool?
it happened.
Gotta throw pool parties
As unsuspecting
this summer.
partygoers were hanging in and
What up,
around the
Mac?
pool, some began to notice that the water level appeared to be receding, with one keen witness
Oh my
pulling out
God,
their
I
phone to
saw
record the
this.
unfolding ordeal.
I've seen
And
this
just as they
video.
hit that record button, things would fall into complete chaos.
Why is that guy standing so close? I would not sinkhole
Suddenly,
chat.
a large sinkhole opens up beneath the pool, in turn creating a massive vortex and an impossibly strong current, dragging essentially everything in its path down towards the opening. And within mere seconds, the pool, once completely filled with water, had become completely barren, with even the pool floats disappearing beneath the surface of the earth.
God
Luckily,
damn.
at the time there were only about 6 partygoers in the pool, and 3 of
One
them
was
had
there
immediately made their
stuck.
way to safety, but one man could be seen standing dangerously close to the newly formed crater, even
Bro,
slipping and falling to the ground just
There's so many people, what up, bros? Like, I see on Twitter, like, them falling off of waterfalls, falling off of cliffs, getting by cars, getting hit by trains. It's just, like, always that one dumbass motherfucker who, like, sees danger, is like, let me walk and get as close as I can to it. Yeah, that might kill me. Let me get close to it. And, like, they just, like, fall over, like, have, like, the worst survival instinct.
just inches away from being pulled into its opening. Thankfully, he too had managed to make his way to safety, but the 2 others weren't so lucky, as in the moments immediately
shit.
before this video began, they had been sucked into the depths of the sinkhole.
2 people were sucked in?
Of the 2, one would be able to quickly pull his way to safety, while the other was nowhere to be found. As rescuers made their way to the scene and attempted to enter the hole, it was discovered that it was far deeper
ate
than
them.
anyone could have imagined, with later reports
What the
showing that the
fuck?
pit was a staggering 43 feet deep, with the entire
Damn.
opening being filled with water. And the missing swimmer, 32-year-old Khalil Kimhi, was trapped at the very bottom. It would take 4 grueling hours of navigating that claustrophobic grave to finally reach Khalil, who by that point was sadly long gone,
That's
having likely already
crazy.
perished by the time rescuers even reached the
Enjoying a pool
scene,
party,
passing away
and
in
then
what
you
must
get
have been one of the
sucked
most
up by a
horrifying
pool.
ways imaginable. After all was said and done, it was revealed that the owner of the villa had built the pool in an unsafe location and had done so without a permit, leading to charges of negligent manslaughter.
Oh my
And though this
God.
event was no doubt a tragedy, it's easy to see just how much worse this could have been if more people had been in that pool at the time. And what truly
Yeah,
haunts me the
dude.
most about this clip is just how unexpected it was. One minute you're enjoying a beautiful swimming pool, and the next, you're trapped 40 feet beneath the earth, drowning with no chance of survival. All because of a freak phenomenon that is entirely unpredictable.
That's so fucking
Snow is
nuts.
mechanically pressed 1,800 pounds to the square inch and emerges in 50-pound blocks of dry ice. When placed in liquids, it returns to its original gaseous state. Desert ice is really hot stuff.
Smoke on the water.
From one pool party to another, this next clip takes us to Moscow, Russia in February of 2020, where an influencer named Ekaterina Didenko was
Oh
preparing
no,
to celebrate her
Russia.
29th birthday.
Crazy ass shit goes
Just a
down
few
in
years
Russia,
prior,
chat.
Ekaterina had graduated from medical school, earning her the title of pharmacist. But rather than going the traditional route and pursuing a career in pharmacy, she instead chose to
Dry-ass
use her
fumes,
expertise
really?
to start a blog focused on creating homemade medicines in order to save her viewers trips to the pharmacy. This type of content is nothing new, and in most cases it's highly controversial, and Ekaterina was no exception to this, with many calling her practices and advice potentially dangerous. This,
Damn.
however, did not stop her from amassing a following of over 1 million people, which was spread out across her Instagram page along with other platforms. And despite her content being controversial in nature, she quickly carved out a legitimate career as an influencer by 2020.
Yeah.
And with her birthday
I'll keep
approaching
that
on the
in mind.
28th of February, she wanted to throw the
Going
perfect
to
party
jail.
to show off
Bruh,
to all of her followers.
Did you hear about the pink sauce lady? She finally went to jail. The lady made the pink sauce. Like, she made this sauce like out of mayonnaise, milk, and a bunch of other shit. And she lived in Florida. And like just put it in a container and it was like shipping it out from her house. And it was like showing up to people's houses like exploded and moldy. It was like giving them food poisoning.
Helping plan the night was
remember that.
Ekaterina's husband, Valentin Didenko, who was on board to make the evening as grand as possible. And Valentin had the perfect plan, something he called a steam show. Previously, the couple had booked a venue to accommodate all their guests, with one of the
Oh
most
shit,
appealing
Alan, what you're
amenities
talking
being
about
its
might
swimming
happen.
pool, and using his limited knowledge
Dry
of
ice
science,
fumes.
along with inspiration from a somewhat viral trend at the time, Valentin thought of a way to turn that ordinary pool room into something extraordinary, by using dry ice to fill the entire room with steam, as dry ice combined with water creates an immediate
Oh
dense
my
fog,
God.
in turn creating his steam show. And so, as the party was going on and guests were having a great time, Valentin decided to reveal the main event, and brought all the partygoers into the room, giving them gowns and goggles to wear, before dumping a box full of dry ice into the water.
Oh
my God, Валя, you're crazy.
Материал только что обновленный. Газообразное состояние.
Oh no.
Instantly, the pool disappears within a cloud of gas, creating the incredible show
This
that
is
both
no
Ekaterina
film.
and Valentin had dreamed of, with Ekaterina herself pulling out her phone to record the moment. And quickly, it became apparent that the pool wasn't just for show, as Valentin himself suddenly dives into the mist, disappearing within its hidden water.
Bro just jumped to his death.
But there was just one problem.
He didn't come
The
back
chemical
up.
reaction that happens when dry ice and water connects doesn't just cause the formation of mist. It causes the formation of carbon dioxide that is produced in such a highly concentrated form that it appears as fog, meaning that the cloud we are seeing here is made entirely of straight CO2,
Oh
which
my
in such high
God.
concentration is toxic to humans, with it causing shortness of breath and eventual asphyxiation. And though Ekaterina's recording shows the group having the time of their lives, no one realized that when that dry ice was placed in the pool, it had in turn placed all of their lives in danger.
This
Making
is
matters
nuts.
worse, Valentin wanted the show to be as long-lasting as possible, and in turn ordered the doors to be closed in order to keep that fog inside the small room, meaning that there was very little ventilation to filter out this toxic gas,
Oh my
making the levels of
God.
CO2 not just very dangerous, but incredibly deadly. And Valentin had just dove directly into its heart.
Он умер! Все, его нет больше!
He would break the surface just one time after this, and although the crowd cheers him
What the
on, believing he's
fuck?
just splashing
Called
around
it.
and having some fun, at this moment, his lungs were filling with fluid, and he was suffocating to death, as below the water he was drowning, and on its surface he was suffocating. He was trapped,
Oh
with
my
the only outcome
God.
being death.
Literally can't breathe
Ekaterina then
either
turns the
way.
camera on herself, revealing another man entering the water as she's laughing and yelling in amusement. And behind her, all of her friends are seen recording the ordeal, oblivious to the fact
That's
that
crazy.
Valentin was
Everyone's
now
just
dying at
recording
the
your
bottom of
death.
the pool. They were far too distracted trying to get the perfect shot for their own social media pages.
Wow, this is insane.
In the end, it truly was the spectacle that Valentin and Ekaterina had dreamed of. Shortly after the recording had ended, partygoers would finally realize that something was terribly wrong, as some began to experience shortness of breath that eventually caused them to pass out. Meanwhile, others began to feel sharp pains throughout their body that were eventually learned to be the result of
Seems
chemical
so
burns.
movie-like.
Once the room was finally evacuated,
My God.
3 partygoers would be unaccounted for, as Natalia Manakova, Yuri Elfarov, and Valentin were left in the foggy room, dead at the bottom of the pool.
Damn! 3 dead!
What should have been the perfect day for Ekaterina had instead ended with her becoming a widow. And as off-putting as this video is, many would point to Ekaterina's behavior following the incident as even more unusual. Immediately after the incident occurred, Ekaterina would start her grieving process by posting this video for the world to see, and subsequently vlogging her experience at the hospital and documenting the death of her husband.
What the fuck? She posted it, made a vlog out of it. All because they were trying to
It was
film
admittedly a
little
bit
YouTube
bizarre,
video.
as many accused her of exploiting the death of her husband to gain internet followers, with
That's
further
holy
questions
shit,
being
she got
posed
the
as to why
bag.
she hadn't considered the
I doubt
deadly
she got a
effects of
bag
dry
from that.
ice and water, as after all, she was an expert in the field of science. The scrutiny towards Ekaterina became so intense at one point that Russian authorities launched an investigation into her actions, claiming that it may be possible to charge her for causing death by negligence, though to my knowledge,
Damn.
nothing ever came of this. Just 5 whole months after the incident, Ekaterina would remarry, with those initial posts documenting the death of her first husband, leading to her
5 months after she remarried? 5 months after you kill your husband by trying to film a YouTube video, remarry. She did that shit on purpose, chat.
gaining an additional 500,000 followers.
That's
Deep
nuts.
inside this vertical city, a machine has come to
Your
life.
Black Widow.
A machine with a terrible secret. Take the stairs. For God's sake, take the stairs.
Elevators creep me out, chat.
It was a quiet January night in the
Seen that video of the
Yuan
guy in the
Finance and
elevator,
Economics
and
building,
he's going up
located
like a
in western
40
Taiwan.
He's
The
going up like a 40 flights. She probably knew. She's probably seeing someone else, wanted to get rid of her husband. In Russia, divorce isn't what it is here. And then she knew that that would work, and she set it up. It's a whole fuck. She's smart. Anyways, this guy was going up like 40 stories or whatever in an elevator, right? And the elevator line snapped and broke, and there's video of him going all the way down, and it just crashed. Oh, it's so scary, bro. Like, that's now like a permanent fear in my head.
16th-floor tower held its
saw
fair
that,
share
dude.
of both office spaces and residences.
Especially when I was in Vegas, there were so many elevators and tall ass buildings. I'm just like, oh my god, this could be my last time.
Though as the clock reached past midnight,
What's worse, chat? Plummeting to earth and dying 40 stories and you can see it, or plummeting to earth 40 stories inside of a box?
only the building
don't
manager
know.
would be awake in its lobby. As he settled in for another uneventful night,
claustrophobic,
the silence
too.
was suddenly broken by a woman rushing in with a small child. The man didn't recognize her as a resident, and given that the offices were closed for the night, he stopped her and questioned why she was
Oh,
there.
shit.
The woman, however, brushed him off in a hurry.
Like, heights are my biggest fear. Like, I think I'd rather, like, fall from the sky. I think I'd rather, like, drown in the ocean, like, hopelessly in the middle of the ocean, than, like, fall from the sky and, like, perish. Y'all watching The Darkest Corners of the
Stating that they were only there to meet a
Internet
friend
videos.
before entering the elevator and
See the
disappearing out of
incoming.
view.
Bro, I'm
According to the
terrified of
man, he
heights.
felt a bad omen in the air after the encounter and only grew more concerned as the morning arrived and the woman had yet to come down and exit the building. So out of curiosity, the manager turned to the building's CCTV
Dude,
footage
it's
to determine
scary.
where the
Yeah, honestly, falling in a box would be better, because I feel like if I felt like I was falling, I would just lay down, like, close my eyes. If I died, whatever, or I would just, like, wake up and maybe survive somehow.
two had gone, only to see this.
We're getting the elevator with a creepy ass stranger. What the fuck?
Inside the elevator, the woman begins hitting the button to floor 11 in what seems to be a panic, and as the doors close behind her and her child, she then removes her coat and places it on the ground, before doing the same with her kid. When the elevator then reaches their desired floor, she quietly slips off her shoes and exits in a hurry. It's unusual footage, as their behavior just seems slightly off, and it's made all the more disturbing due to what they could or couldn't see on the cameras after that. Upon exiting the elevator, the pair are seen walking down the hallway on floor 11 in this grainy footage recaptured by the man's cell phone, with the two heading in the general direction of the stairwell, which also happened to be the sole entrance to the roof. And from there, the two aren't seen again.
What the fuck?
Noting this, the manager immediately began fearing the worst, as their bizarre behavior coupled with the route seemingly leading to the roof could only mean one thing.
Oh my god.
And quickly, the police were called for what they believed to be a cleanup job, figuring that the two had jumped off the roof. This belief was further fueled by the woman's actions in the elevator, as removing one shoe prior to is apparently a somewhat common thing in Asian countries, as they don't want to track dirt into the afterlife.
What up, Mars?
However, once officers arrived on scene and searched the entire perimeter of the building, there was no sign of the mother and daughter, not even a single trace of blood, meaning they couldn't possibly have jumped.
What the fuck?
Police would then look through the entirety of the footage and review the positioning of the cameras, only to determine that virtually all exits were covered by the watchful eyes of their CCTV. If these two had left the building, they would surely have the footage to prove it. Though while sifting through
Aliens
the entire night, this
You guys
moment
believe in aliens
was the
or
last
not?
they'd ever be seen on camera. So if they hadn't jumped and if they hadn't left, then they must be somewhere in the building, they thought, which led to a full-scale search of the complex, with officers going door to door searching every nook and cranny. However, while asking around, not a single resident had seen the pair that night, or even heard them for that matter. And when their initial sweep was concluded, the police would be left empty-handed, only uncovering just a few set of clues. For starters, they would find the clothes and shoes left behind on the elevator, and they would also find the woman's moped, which she had driven to the building.
Damn.
And finally, they would find a single suitcase, found vacant on the top steps leading to the roof. Police would go on to describe this piece of luggage as suspicious, but never revealed its true contents.
Believe in
In
aliens
fact,
for sure.
following an initial report, they would never give confirmation as to whether it was involved in this case or not. Either way, it led them to a dead end, as they believed these two could not have possibly left that building, though at the same time, they
Damn.
clearly weren't there. Multiple times after this, the building would be searched and searched and searched again, even as recently as 2013, when they would go as far as to check the water pipes and even the water tank itself,
What the
which was
fuck?
inspired by an unfolding case of a similar nature halfway across the world, but no trace of the pair was ever discovered. Immediately after this footage was taken, these two vanished
Like
into
there
thin
has
air.
to be something.
Following the disappearance,
I don't
local
know.
news would broadcast
I
the
mean,
footage where a man named Zhang
will
would
we
come
ever
forward
know?
stating that this was his
I
wife
think if
and
there was, like,
four-year-old
a whole
daughter.
universe
The woman's
of, like,
surname was
intelligent
Leo, and the
species,
pair had 4
we would
children
know,
together, though their relationship
some
was
sort of
anything but
contact at some
perfect.
point.
Multiple reports claim that on that very night, the two had gotten into an argument, with some going as far as to say that Zhang had actually abused her, causing her to leave the home in a hurry, grabbing only their youngest daughter. Meanwhile, their eldest daughter would go on record stating that Leo had told her that they were going to visit a friend's house just for a few days, only to never return. Despite the significance of discovering the identity of this woman and her daughter, it would ultimately fail to help solve the case, as there have been
So
no
she
sightings
just
of these two
disappeared?
since this moment, turning this into one of Taiwan's most mysterious
They hide
cases
from
of all
us.
time.
They better hide
And in the
from me,
region,
bro.
3 major theories have emerged. First, many locals in the area believe that
Do not trust
something
my horny ass
otherworldly
around
happened to
aliens.
these two, with one resident at the time stating, "I think they entered another time and space." This belief is actually so strong
wish
that
there was
even as
time
of just a few
travel.
years ago, that 11th floor is practically left vacant, as the only remaining family on that floor claims that everyone moved out of fear of the supernatural surrounding the incident.
That's
Another
fucked.
long-lasting theory was that the two were still somewhere in the building, having potentially taken their lives or just gotten stuck there. And officials believed this for years after the case, assuming that eventually someone would happen upon them.
What the
Though that day
fuck?
has never come, and due to the extreme
Very
summer
real for
heat in the
that.
region, it's likely that the smell alone would have led to their discovery by now. Which brings us to our third theory, that somehow the two had actually managed to leave the building without detection. Due to the camera positioning in the hotel, this seems rather unlikely, but some claim that there is a specific route that potentially could have provided just enough cover for them to avoid all the cameras. But this would have had to have been precise and seemingly deliberate. What makes this so strange, though, is that Leo apparently had limited to no knowledge of this building beforehand, begging the question how she could navigate in such an efficient manner, or why she would want to for that matter. And this is far from the only questions regarding this, like, why would she even enter this building to begin with if she was just going to leave? And why go to that 11th floor in particular and remove those articles of clothing? And maybe most importantly of all, if she had somehow snuck around those cameras, how had she or her child never been seen again? Nothing about this case makes any sense, and honestly, what happened to these two at this point is anyone's guess, as this is practically all the information available on their disappearance. Since then, there have been no sightings, no use of their health insurance, no use of their bank account, and their daughter's records show that she has never been enrolled to another school. It's almost as if they evaporated into that cold night air.
When I was in high school, this girl went missing, and I'm pretty sure to this day they still have never found her. They don't know what happened to her, they don't know anything. Burger King is doo-doo. I told that the other day, but Unc's like, nah, Burger King good. Apparently in Maryland, they fuck with Burger King Mars, but listen, I'm not fighting that battle with Unc again. He likes that shit.
Part of me hopes that this was all an attempt to flee an abusive relationship, and that somehow this was all just a distraction for these two to escape and start a new life elsewhere, which could explain that supposed friend they were going to meet, why they shed their coats, and how they managed to sneak out of there in the first place. But things of that nature are easier said than done, and I can't help but get a sinking feeling that they are no longer with us, as surely at some point, some trace of them would have appeared by now. But unfortunately, an absolute conclusion is something that perhaps we may never get, and instead, we're simply left with this chilling video, which is undoubtedly one of YouTube's darkest.
Chicken fries are so yum. So, what is a chicken fry? Is it just a chicken nugget in the shape of a french fry? Chicken fries are gas? Or is it different? Wait, what makes... I'm so confused about them. What is sis
The
doing,
celebration
bro?
was well underway. December 5th, 2009 marked the 8-year anniversary of the beloved Lame Horse, a roughly 5,000 square foot nightclub located in Perm, Russia. On the evening of the 4th, the club began to fill with partygoers keen on joining in on the massive party.
They're playing Queen.
To commemorate the night, a cameraman and an interviewer would be on scene to document the events of that evening, which they did by first speaking to patrons as they roamed the club, getting their thoughts and opinions on the celebration.
They got good sauce. Does Burger King have their own special sauce, like Chick-fil-A sauce or Raising Cane sauce?
The night all seemed to be in good fun, and it was only just beginning for most, with the party set to go all throughout the night, and as the recording continues, it's clear that the club had big plans to bring in this new year. Following the interviews, the footage shows us a view of the dance floor, which was occupied by a group of performers who had been hired to energize the crowd and further build the hype of the night. The organizers had even hired an MC for the evening, whose job was to keep the party alive. By this point, over 300 people had made their way into the building, as the MC continues the show by joking around with two young women, who were clearly guests of the bar, with the cameraman fixing his lens on the three as the crowd watches on in amusement. But it's at this exact moment that the camera unintentionally catches something far more interesting, something that could easily be missed as it seemed so unimportant in the moment. While everyone's eyes are fixed forward at the show before them, This woman, standing on the far right of the camera, barely occupying a sliver of the frame, casually turns her head, only for her eyes to lock onto something behind her, and noticing the woman's
fuck?
bizarre reaction, the cameraman follows her lead and turns the camera in the same direction, revealing this.
I love their hash browns.
Очень люблю женщин, которые созрели. Зрелые, красивые, желанные, обаятельные. Дамы и господа!
Unbeknownst to pretty much everyone in the club at that time, a spark from the show's pyrotechnics had made contact with the club's ceiling, which was covered in decorative twigs for the party,
Oh,
and within a split
shit.
second, a fire would erupt. The initial
McDonald's
shock
breakfast
caused
is
many to
gas.
freeze in place
I
for
love
precious
hash browns.
seconds, unable to comprehend what exactly was happening. And it wasn't until the MC, the same one in charge of keeping that party alive, began to shout, "Ladies and gentlemen, guests of the club, we are on fire, please leave the hall," that the patrons would finally unfreeze.
Мы горим! Выходим из зала! Соблюдаем!
Damn.
Following this announcement, the crowd flew into a panic, desperately making their way to the exit, which is where the first fatal issue arose. The club supposedly had 2 exits,
Wow.
one through the front door and the other located behind the stage. However, that second exit had no signs indicating where it was, meaning that practically no one in the room knew that it was even there. Because of this, most of the patrons began pushing towards that one main exit. Upon making his way into the hallway, the cameraman reveals the exit and, in turn, another devastating issue. In order to control the crowd going into the venue earlier that night, one of the 2 doors at the front entrance was locked, meaning that this small opening was the only means of escape for the 300 plus people trapped inside. And to make
That's
matters worse,
insane.
by this point, the entire venue was now shrouded in smoke.
Dude, Giraffe.
As so many
I was at the Pauly D show, Suicide Boys, Steve Aoki, like any of those places. What's happening? Like if there was a fire, a shooting, anything, bro, we'd be screwed because there's literally like body to body people all the way to the door. Basically they're in this club and the roof caught on fire and like people can't get out, like shoving, being trapped with no way out. Have you guys seen that one video where like there's this like rooftop club and it got so packed? You know how those rooftop clubs, like the railings are glass? This was like somewhere in like Colombia or Latin America, whatever. There's a bunch of people leaned up against the glass and the club was so packed. They're like people that literally leaned up against the glass and all of a sudden the glass broke and like probably like 10 people fell off this like 10-20 story building because like the glass railing broke and they just fell. Fucking nuts.
many people were attempting to fit through that small exit, they became stuck, causing a logjam and in turn, a human crush. And the more people desperately tried to push through that door, the more jammed it became. Meanwhile, those still trapped on the dance floor were left hopelessly lost in that impenetrable smoke. And within the mob of people rushing towards that exit, the camera suddenly goes dark before shutting off completely.
Oh my god. I've been good, Mac. How you been?
Somehow, the cameraman, along with multiple others, were able to squeeze their way out of the exit, as evident when the camera begins to record sometime later, this time in the middle of the road, revealing hints of the havoc that was occurring both inside and outside of the club. But tragically, this is where one last fatal factor was added to the equation, which was highlighted by a quote from a survivor, one of the very first people to escape the club. After I got out, there were no firemen or emergency services for about 20 minutes. Nobody at all. There were only 2 ambulances altogether. They managed to take 6 or 7 men and left. No more ambulance cars arrived, at least I saw none. Firemen had pulled out a number of people by then. Half clothed, they were simply laid out on the cold asphalt. Nobody cared for them. People were lying on the ground for about an hour and a half, definitely for no less than an hour. It could be that many of them died because of this, because of the cold. It was 16 degrees below zero outdoors. In what has since been heavily criticized, and rightfully so, the emergency response team only fueled the intensity of this disaster, as many of those trapped inside were left to their own devices, and those who were rescued were laid out on the street with severe injuries, and most of their clothes burned off, forced to lie there unable to move for over an hour in the freezing cold. It's unknown how many deaths were caused by this alone, but if these first-hand accounts are to be believed, it's likely that many were.
You almost burned to death.
Not only had the venue
the
itself failed these victims, but the emergency response team had as well. Ultimately, 101 people would die on the scene that day, and an additional 55 perished later in the hospital, with the catastrophe amassing a death toll of 156 total people, making it the deadliest fire in Russia since the fall of the Soviet Union. The footage from that night...
There was about 300 people in the club, and half of them died, chat. That's crazy, bro.
Taken before, during, and after the event truly account for some of the most disturbing on the site. But two moments in particular.
They had, like, how you saw the picture of, like, the one door. They had locked the other door so people couldn't push their way in because it was a busy night. And so when people were trying to push their way out and that was the only exit, like, they just got jammed up so nobody could get out. That's crazy.
Have always stuck in my mind, the first being that initial stunned reaction from the lady just off screen, as she had noticed what was transpiring before anyone else, and the other being that first reveal of the small fire on the ceiling that would so quickly and so savagely engulf the entire building and claim the lives of so many.
Damn, shit. That's gonna make you think twice about going to the club.
I wanted to briefly mention that I have brand new
no free brand deal. Subscribe to my Patreon. My Patreon way better. We watch this one.
Or it can draw conclusions. It's a personal computer from Apple, and it's as easy to use as this.
Yes, raid, house and garden.
But by taking the proper precautions, you can get the job done safely.
Whoa, you okay to drive?
Yeah, fine.
There was no way to defend herself.
I hate getting pulled
she
over.
knew she had been caught. As in the hours prior to getting behind the wheel of her car, 21-year-old Jayana Webb had consumed far too many drinks, causing her driving to become uncontrollable and erratic. And after reaching speeds well over 100 miles per hour and driving right past a pair of state troopers, Jayana was now pulled over on the I-95 in South Philadelphia. There, she would be approached by officers Martin Mack and Brandon Siska, as she sat one breathalyzer.
If you see two officers like that, like they look like that, you're definitely getting a ticket and maybe arrested. They look like they're gonna give you a ticket.
Away from facing harsh legal action
like
for her poor decision. But just as the officers began conversing with the intoxicated woman, their attention would soon be called elsewhere, as an urgent call was made to their radio, alerting them that a pedestrian had been wandering by foot on that very highway just a few miles ahead. Unaware at this point that Jayana was in fact inebriated, and assuming that the pedestrian was a far more pressing concern, the officers sprang into action and sped away into the night, allowing Jayana to leave freely and breathe the ultimate sigh of relief.
Oh my gosh.
Clearly she had dodged a bullet, but rather than being thankful that she had avoided certain and serious legal ramifications, the incident instead seemed to inflate her ego, as she immediately took to Twitter, still parked on the side of the road, writing in a braggadocious manner, "Why the cop pull me and he say I'm doing 110 and a 50? As strange of a response as this may have been to narrowly avoiding a life-changing arrest, this was surprisingly on brand for Jayana, as between incessant posting about how much she loves to drink, she would also tweet, "If you ask me, I'm the best drunk driver ever."
That's so gross.
This was clearly a
Drink
pattern
driving
for
is so
Jayana,
lame.
a normalized action, as she believed that she
Way
was
back,
fully
Sammy.
capable of driving drunk, and also that she was actually good at it, which is not only incredibly frightening, but also far from the truth.
Those people literally, like,
Immediately
people like
after
that
tweeting this
literally live in
message
the world,
out,
like,
Jayana
with
would
us,
again speed
and
off
they
into the
could be the
night,
reason
having
that,
gotten
like,
away with
you're driving home from the gym or whatever, and your mom and dad die, or you die, like, can't even control it because there's just people out here who like to drive drunk, and they think that's just insane.
with her drunk driving once more. Though, ironically, just minutes later, she would again approach those very same officers that had just pulled her over, as well as that very pedestrian they were trying to help. Only this time, there was a problem. She was going far too fast, and was impaired to the point that her reaction time was severely delayed.
Oh my god.
She quickly began to swerve out of control, and by that point, there was no stopping. And in an instant, Jayana would careen her vehicle directly into Officers Martin Mack and Brandon Siska, as well as that same pedestrian they were attempting
Oh
to
my
save,
God,
striking all
bro.
three at unimaginable speeds. As the car finally came to a stop, all three of the men lay motionless on the pavement. None of them were alive,
That
with the
is
only survivor of the
sick,
incident
bro.
being Jayana, the best drunk driver ever.
If you don't stop your friend from drinking and
So
driving,
insanely awful. It really is, bro, because, like, it's like the most inconsiderate, lowest thing to do, what of Osby, to drink and drive. Because, like, it's not even about yourself, it's about, like, you're risking, like, you're literally threatening everyone's life. Like, you can drive, you're threatening my life, you're threatening everyone's life.
you're as good as dead.
Can't take threats to your life lightly. I've seen
March
so many
30th,
videos of people hanging onto
2017,
things and
a
falling
disturbing
off and
video
dying.
begins circulating
I've seen
across
this one on
Twitter,
Twitter.
showing a woman hanging out of a window, clinging on for dear life with one hand. Below her was 7 stories of nothing, leading to concrete ground and metal. Certain death for anyone unfortunate enough to fall from that height. Understandably, the woman is crying and begging to be saved, yelling over and over again to hold me, hold me. But what makes this story especially disturbing is the commentary in the background heard in response to these pleas. As the woman desperately clings to the window, another woman stands inches away, holding her phone and recording the ordeal, as she calmly responds to the cries for help by saying, "Oh crazy, come back."
Damn.
It's a chilling line, knowing that one woman was clearly powerless and in dire need of help, while the other woman just stands behind the camera, seeming completely unfazed by the gravity of the situation,
insane.
waiting for tragedy to strike. And that's exactly what would happen, as the lady soon loses her grip, causing her to plummet to the ground below. Moments later, the camera shows the woman as she lays there deathly still,
I've been
7 stories
soon.
below. It was an extremely shocking video, and one that immediately raised questions as to what exactly had led to this scenario, with millions viewing the video and sharing it across Twitter
I've
in a
seen that
desperate
video on
search for
Twitter,
answers, as the clip offered nothing else in the way of
Splatted
context.
pretty hard too.
Initially, it was believed and even reported that the woman had done this as a way of taking her own life, and the woman behind the camera seemingly didn't believe that she would go through with it, perhaps
you,
just
Osby.
not understanding that
Love
by
you.
that point, there was literally nothing the hanging woman could have done to pull herself back up. And due to this being the most prominent initial theory, many would walk away from this video believing that it was sadly yet another tragic suicide. However, there was something that still didn't sit right about this clip, as the cold, callous way that the woman off-screen had
Sammy.
spoken to this struggling woman just comes across as so off-putting, leading some to believe that there had to be more to this story. A notion that would turn out to be correct.
Oh shit.
Upon the release of a series of local articles from Kuwait, it would be revealed that this hanging woman's name was actually Adish Sadiq, and what we are witnessing in this video actually isn't an attempted suicide, but rather an attempted murder. At the time, Adish had moved from her home in Ethiopia to quote-unquote work as a maid in Kuwait, and I say this because it would later be revealed that Adish had essentially been a slave to her employer. She had only been working for this particular boss for 3 days, but during this time she had been held captive and was forbidden from leaving the building, making Adish essentially a prisoner or a slave, which sadly is all too common of an occurrence in the area due to something called the kafala system, which is way too complicated to fully dive into here.
Sponsorship system traps tens of thousands of migrant domestic workers and highly abusive onto the modern slavery. Laws fail to protect the workers, and the establishment has no interest in changing the current system.
Kafala system, which is way too complicated to fully dive into here, but on this particular day, Adish finally had enough, and she approached her boss telling her that she was quitting, while demanding to be released. Though it wasn't quite that simple, and her boss did not take kindly to this request. In response, Adish would be grabbed and thrown inside of the bathroom of what appears to be some sort of apartment complex, with the room being located near the very top of the building. Once inside, her boss, a woman who to my knowledge has not been publicly named, would lock the door and begin shouting at Adish and proclaiming that she was going to kill her, and that no one would ever find out or even care for that matter, which was most certainly true given the unbalanced power dynamic in the area between employers and foreign workers. And knowing that the woman was in fact serious with her threats, and that if she were killed in that bathroom, no one would have known, Adish made the split-second decision to try and escape out the window, despite knowing that she would most likely not survive the fall. But at least this way, as slim as it may seem, she had a chance. Going out that window was purely an act of desperation, but to Adish it was the only way, and so she clambered out the window and prepared to plummet to the ground below. But not before her boss pulled out her cell phone to record the woman's final moments, while openly mocking her as she fell to the ground below. This explains the lack of assistance that the camera woman offered, and why she seemed to have such a smug attitude towards the helpless woman, because she didn't care if Adish died. Her life was meaningless to her if she wasn't her slave. And to make this employer's behavior even more jarring, she would immediately upload the video to her very own Snapchat, where it would then be re-recorded and shared across the web.
Bro, who the fuck uploads this shit on their own social? Like, all these people, like, they record deaths, they record their crimes, like, alright, I'm gonna post this on Instagram, just get some likes. Let's get this on WorldStar.
About what exactly had happened inside that bathroom, it was this employer that began the lie that Adish was merely trying to take her own life. She had formulated this entire rumor to essentially absolve herself from any responsibility, and it's almost certain that she would have gotten away with this too, had it not been for the fact that Adish survived.
Oh, yeah, I remember
Upon
seeing the
falling
video
to the
that
ground
she
below,
survived.
Adish's fall would be broken by a metal awning, which more than likely saved her life, as miraculously she was able to physically walk away from the scene with merely a broken arm and a few other non-life-threatening injuries. She'd even go on to give an interview inside the hospital just a few days later, where she would reveal the truth behind this shocking video, with this testimony leading to the arrest of her employer, who would ultimately receive just a few months of jail time. But still, it's crazy to me just how differently this story could have ended, and probably should have ended, as imagine if this video had never been recorded, and imagine if Adish hadn't survived that fall. I mean, the truth would have literally never been known, which is such a scary and utterly depressing thought.
That's crazy.
Though thankfully, the story did have a happy ending, a phenomenon that is sadly all too rare when exploring the dark corners of the internet. If you've seen my videos before, then you know that the turn is along with.
If we miss a step in the rigging process, things could go seriously wrong. The first step to preventing accidents is preparation. Let's begin by taking a close look at...
In recent years, the popularity of live streaming has seemingly reached an all-time high, as it allows the audience to interact with their favorite creators in a uniquely intimate way. But with any content like this, there always lies a dark side, as unpredictable events can interrupt the live stream at any moment.
Bro, I've seen so many live stream deaths and things like that. Morgie, what up?
Morgie!
Unsurprisingly, this has led to countless compilations and clips throughout the web, documenting the many disturbing moments that have happened when creators go live. And of these endless examples, a few have always stood out to me. In the year 2021, a 23-year-old named Chao Quimi had been building a following on the social media site Douyin, the Chinese version of what many of us know today as TikTok, which will actually be featured in the remainder of today's cases. She would post numerous videos and live streams, helping build her follower count to over 100,000 people. It was a more than respectable number, and though she wasn't the most famous person on the platform by any means, many believed that she was well on her way to internet stardom. But before she could get there, she knew that she had to keep a stable job and establish some sort of income, as she was already in the process of building her family, being the mother of 2 young children. And so she would spend her days working as a crane operator, assisting in numerous construction projects, and earning herself a decent wage, as it wasn't a job that most would sign up for. The cranes that Chao was often tasked with operating often stood hundreds and even thousands of feet in the air. It certainly wasn't a job for the faint of heart, but Chao seemingly embraced the challenge, and in many ways used her unique skill set to her advantage, as she would often document her life as a crane operator on Douyin, with these videos, along with her dancing content, being responsible for the majority of her viewership. And by the summer of 2021, Chao would begin not only making videos while at work, but she would also begin live streaming right from her job. And on July 20th, 2021, when her workday began to wind down, she would once again fire up her stream. The full version of this stream doesn't appear to be available anywhere online today, and rather, we only have a roughly 2-minute clip from that day, with the video starting in silence, as Chao had been singing along to copyrighted music, while inside the small cab of her massive crane, sitting 160 feet in the air. She would then set her phone down with the camera still rolling, as the viewers began flocking to the stream, loving every second of it.
Did she die or something? I don't know yet.
Or at least they were, until the footage cut to this.
What the fuck?
Though the exact moment has been cut from this video, likely out of respect for Chao, as she was streaming 16 stories in the sky, Chao finishes dancing and begins to walk down the steps of the crane until she slips, causing her to free fall all the way to the ground with her phone supposedly still in hand. On her way down, she seems to strike metal bar after metal bar from the crane until she finally hit the ground below, killing her instantly with her phone still recording. I just can't even imagine being one of the viewers in that live stream and watching that very moment that she begins to fall. And ultimately, I think it's a good thing that the actual footage of her slipping has essentially been wiped from the internet, as even with the missing frames, this is truly one of the most disturbing live stream accidents that I have ever seen. An accident that showcased the brutal end of a rising star taken too soon. And throughout the history of the Douyin platform, she's far from the only one.
See? It's not so hard after all. Once you get the hang of it, it can be easy to rig a load safely.
Raid hunts bugs down like raiders, attacks roaches and ants as they crawl, and kills them dead.
Lu
nuts.
Chao Malmauzi was also a young creator on the Douyin site, focusing most of her content on the latest fashion trends, with her videos helping her to amass a following of over 600,000 people, making her a full-on celebrity on the platform. It's a type of virality that so many people in our world desire. But this also comes with a downside. With so many eyes on you, the criticism and hatred lobbied your way on a daily basis is often overwhelming, and for many it can be too much to bear. And for Lu, this fame ultimately came at the cost of her own mental sanity. Even before her rise to prominence, Lu had long since struggled with severe depression, and now, given the rise of what her family described as constant online harassment, this depression would only worsen by the day. By August of 2021, things had gotten so bad for Lu that her family began to fear that she may try and harm herself, and decided to place her in a psychiatric hospital with the hopes that there, she would be safe and hopefully overcome her personal demons. And for a while, that's exactly what she would do, as she supposedly began making serious strides in her mental health. Though once released, her progress would again diminish, as she would fall back into creating content, with the online harassment only growing worse and worse the more her account grew. Which leads us to October 14th, 2021. On top of dealing with the stress associated with
online harassment and bullying, the internet is not for you. Because like like there's a lot of good things about growing on the internet, but like there's also like hateful things and like nasty things. So if it affects your mental health, you definitely don't want to like be like an internet person. Sure.
Online fame, Lu would also have to deal with a breakup between her and her longtime boyfriend, something that would cause her already collapsing mental health to completely plummet. And so that day, she would take to Douyin and post a cryptic video stating that this may be the last time she ever interacts with her audience, with the clip being titled,
I
"This is
should post on Douyin.
probably the last video. Thank you for following along."
大家好，我是小猫，这也许可能是我最后一条给大家发送视频了。想知道原因的话，那就来小号看我直播吧。谢谢你们陪我这么久。
It is an incredibly worrisome video, as given her complex history with depression, viewers grew worried that she was alluding to taking her own life, with some questioning what she had in store for this supposed live stream, or if it would even happen at all. But sure enough, as promised, that same night Lu would go live and reveal her plan. As the stream starts, Lu is sitting in front of a camera, echoing the sentiment of her previous video, and expressing how truly sad she was, before she shifted the conversation to ending her life. As viewers began clicking on her stream, Lu explains how she had purchased liquid pesticide from the store, which was said to be highly toxic, as a single sip was capable of causing death. And not only did she buy this, but she also explained how she planned to drink it right there on stream, before asking her viewers what they thought. By this point, her stream had already amassed over 1,200 viewers, many of whom being supposed fans of the young woman, who clearly was in desperate need of help. But rather than helping talk her out of this, the live chat instead began to turn on her. Looking at still images pulled from the stream, the majority of her comments read things like, "Drink, drink, drink," or "Drink if you want to." And even more nefariously, other users would write, "Drink up, fatty," and "Prove that you have depression in front of this many people. Drink the pesticide." It's unclear what Lu's true intentions were when starting the stream, but many believe that this was simply done as a call for help, with one of her own friends even stating that this was only done as a way of attracting her ex-boyfriend's attention, and that she never actually intended on taking her own life. But seeing the way that her chat had turned on her, and hearing the demands that she drink the pesticide, only fueled her spiraling mental health. And so, in an instant, Lu grabbed the bottle and began to chug. Following this, Lu puts the jug down.
Video of it, bro. This is insane, bro. Like the internet and social media really does have such a strong hold on people and their mental health and psychosis, and people in their worst state their worst moments go on the internet and people still troll, they still put them down. Like, I don't understand. Like, yeah, it's the internet, it's a joke, but like telling someone to do that, like, you not look in the mirror and be like, what the fuck am I doing on the internet all day? If you're telling people to like to off themselves, drink pesticides, contributing to someone, you know, sewer sliding themselves, like, do you not like sit back like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Bro, people genuinely have lost conscience, like having a conscience. They've lost the ability to feel guilt. Like, they'll just be the worst, most terrible people on the internet and then like just live fine lives and do whatever and unbothered. It's like, bro, it's fucking scary, bro. Scary as fuck.
And makes a remark stating, "That was hard to drink," before the poison seemingly begins to take effect. The stream then ends as Lou clutches her throat and stops the video. With the live stream over, Lou immediately began to regret her decision, as she would quickly grab her phone and call an ambulance. However, it was much too late, and sadly, she would lose her life, thanks in large part to the encouragement from her very own audience.
That's insane.
It's a horrible story, but somehow it actually gets darker from here, as it actually has one of the most shocking twists that I have personally ever seen in a case before. Following her passing, Lou's body would be quickly cremated with a funeral planned shortly after, so her loved ones could pay their respects. Though something strange happened before the ceremony could commence, as the ashes of Lou would disappear. Apparently, the crematorium had refused to turn over Lou's ashes to her family, claiming that somehow they had gotten lost, though in actuality, an investigation would reveal that these remains had actually been stolen, and stolen by none other than the employees responsible for her cremation. According to reports, numerous members of the staff had taken the remains of Lou with the intention of selling them on the black market, as once news broke of her passing, the agency was contacted by an individual expressing interest in purchasing her cremated remains. And what did this man have planned once in possession of these ashes? Well, he wanted to marry them. In certain areas of China, there exists a practice called ghost marriages, where people are allowed to marry after death. This is done due to the fact that unmarried girls are seen as undesirable in their society and can even be shameful for the parents, so some will choose to marry the deceased individuals as a way of supposedly saving their souls and their families from the shame. It's a bizarre tradition that typically happens between people who at the very least knew each other, but it's especially twisted when it's done without any form of consent from the victim or her family, as this man was a complete stranger to the girl. Though thankfully, this plan would eventually fall through when the buyer supposedly backed out, and the operation would eventually be busted, leading to Lou's remains being found and safely returned to her family. And it's this family that I truly feel sorry for the most in this situation, as not only did they have to deal with the highly publicized passing of their daughter in such a horrific way, but also the theft and almost the marriage of her remains.
That's nuts.
Let's turn now to China, where the Winter Olympics are underway in Beijing. China's human rights abuses are getting as much attention as the athletes.
Our final case once again takes us back to the Douyin app and a small impoverished village within Suzhou, China. There, a man named Dong Mumin had been living with his family of 8 children, 7 boys and 1 girl, a dynamic that was extremely unusual to say the least, as China had only just recently gotten rid of its one-child policy, yet somehow Dong had found a workaround and managed to grow this family all of his own.
Damn.
Even more surprising was the fact that Dong actually lived in destitute poverty.
That's kind of crazy. In China, there used to be a 1-child limit. From heights. Huh? Huh?
Hardly earning enough to take care of.
They're all different people. This girl fell from heights. This girl. And then this girl drank poison. They're different.
Of himself, let alone this big family. Yet
Bro,
somehow he
Orky thinks all Asian people are the same. What the fuck?
He found a way for himself and his children to survive, and not just
they're
survive, but
different
seemingly
stories.
thrive, as Dong always seemed to have a smile on his face, and his
God.
family remained positive and full of joy despite their circumstances. To the
That's
locals,
fucked up,
his
Morgie.
story was incredibly
Stop Asian
touching,
hate.
and soon enough, this
Seriously,
story would
guys.
begin to spread to the rest of the world. As
Not
Dong began to
Morgus.
document his life on Douyin, where he ran the aptly named Father of 8 page, which most would view as extremely inspirational
old
given his
people
positive
video this shit
outlook and the
out.
love he had for his family. Soon enough, his videos began being viewed
my
by
head.
thousands of people, growing his account to 600,000 followers
kids you
in the
guys
span
wanna
of
have,
just
Chad?
a few uploads.
我今年56，去了那日本个，不是喜欢还。
And before long, Dong had become a full-on small-town celebrity, with other influencers traveling to the region to interview him, as well as to help him set up ways for his audience to donate to his family. This exposure and outside help
have
led
kids,
to a
Ellie?
brand new stream of income, as well as a seemingly endless supply of donations for his children, who would receive such a staggering amount of gifted clothes that it quite literally filled up an entire section of his already small home.
Damn.
The whole ordeal was undeniably touching, and among the many influencers to help make these donations happen was an account called Shujo Brother Yiksu, a man who had visited Dong and his family on multiple occasions. And on one particular day in late January of 2021, he would once again show up unannounced to the home of Dong for another routine visit. And it was on this visit that everything changed.
What?
Upon being let into Dong's home, the man behind the Shujo Brother Yiksu account, who I'll now be referring to simply as Shujo, as I was unable to find his actual name, would begin interviewing one of Dong's many sons, who mentioned something unusual. Holding what appeared to be food in his hand, the child mentions how he and his brothers were often tasked with feeding their mother, who lived out back. This was a bizarre statement from the child, as after all of Shujo's visits, he had never once seen a mother figure, and up until this point, most had just assumed that she was out of the picture. And so, confused, Shujo asked the boy to take them to their mother, to which he was promptly led to a small hut behind.
Hey, Sammy, sweetheart. So much for the gifted motherfucking sub. I appreciate that so much. Chat. We're at 13 out of 24 sub goal. Appreciate you, Sammy. Good go.
The house with his camera drawn.
想不想你妈妈
Love you, Sammy.
你妈妈就是你妈妈，你没事，你是大男子汉了，你就是家庭的男子汉，男子汉，男子汉。嗯。你好。冷吗？不冷。我给你拿个衣服穿上吧。我给你拿个衣服穿上吧。我给你拿个衣服去，好不好？我给你拿件衣服，我看你咱有
chained up.
我给你拿一件。
Inside the dilapidated hut, Shujo would find a disheveled woman with a chain around her neck, attached to the wall and sealed by a padlock. The woman herself looked scared, frail, and was noticeably freezing, as that winter day when the video was filmed had been particularly cold. The woman was not only without a jacket, but without shoes, barefoot and shivering in the corner of the room. The majority of her words were barely discernible, as she seemed completely disconnected from the world around her, with the only understandable statement she could manage to make being how she was kept there like a prostitute.
喝点水吧，我给你弄点倒点水。
阿哥，我就记一下你，记一了，我跟你记一呀，我哥。
我吃吧。
In all the videos posted by and about Dong, this was the first time his wife and the mother of his children was shown on camera. Immediately, the clip would spread across China, prompting concern for the chained woman, as given the optics alone, many feared that she may be a victim of human trafficking, and that Dong, this supposedly wholesome figure on the Douyin app, may have actually been using her for the sole purpose of bearing children. In response
What
to the
the
allegations, Dong came forward and admitted that
While
the
watching
woman, whose
this-
surname was Yang, was in fact his wife, but that she suffered from
Subtitles.
debilitating mental health issues. And due to this, he claimed that Yang would often lose control and attempt to hurt those around her, including her children. And so, for their safety, she was kept chained up in a hut outside of the house.
Oh my
And this was a
God.
sentiment echoed by officials in the area, as a statement would quickly be made by law enforcement stating, "Her family has been given further assistance to ensure they have a warm Lunar New Year." Despite this quick response, however, the public largely doubted the story that Dong and the authorities had been telling, as
Claim no
regardless of its
evil.
validity, the way this woman was being kept is clearly just inhumane, and things would only get more suspicious from here as people attempted to dig deeper. For starters, many would visit the region to try and assist Yang and hopefully save her from this neglect, only to discover that Chinese authorities had actually closed off the entire town in which Dong's family had lived, making access to them impossible.
What
Along
the
with this,
fuck?
journalists who had written about the incident were also supposedly arrested, along with the actual owner of
What
the
the
Shujo Brother
fuck?
Iksu account, and 2 other influencers who had attempted to help Yang. It seemed clear that
Brother
China was
Angelic.
attempting to fully censor this whole ordeal, and for good reason too, as this video was released just
cool. I
days
love
before the
Ghost
start of
Adventure.
the already controversial Winter Olympic Games, which just so happened to be taking place in China. But as hard as they tried to suppress
Wow.
this, the story of the chained woman had already spread far across the world, even on one day being mentioned across social media more so than the actual Olympics themselves. And in the face of intense international scrutiny, the truth would finally be revealed. In actuality, this lady's name isn't even Yang, and instead it was Chao Humami, and sadly, she had in fact been the victim of human trafficking. In 1996, when Chao
Oh
was
my
just
God.
20 years old, she was taken to a mental health clinic where somehow she would end up being sold into a trafficking ring. From
Oh my
there, she was bought and
God.
sold on 3 separate occasions, with one of her buyers being Dong's father. Once purchased, Dong would marry the woman and essentially use her as a means of birthing children. And it was within that backyard hut that Dong would often leave this starved and freezing woman, chained up like an animal, with no chance to leave, and only using her when it would come time to have another child. And as for her violent outbursts, well, that too was a fabrication by Dong, as it would later be revealed that she was actually suffering from a seizure disorder, and each time she would have one, Dong would punish her by chaining her up, not because she was dangerous or anything like that, but because she was an inconvenience. The whole situation is unbelievably horrible, and truthfully, I can't even imagine the horrors that this poor woman has endured. And without this massive public pressure, it's likely she would have lived the rest of her life as a captive woman. Though thankfully, this doesn't appear to be the case, as it's believed that she has now finally been rescued and is being given the proper care that she deserved all along, while Dong and multiple others involved in her trafficking have since been arrested, leading to an extremely shocking and heinous end to a man once considered one of Douyin's most wholesome creators. Though there's one last element to this story, an element that
shit,
totally
another
takes
twist.
away from this somewhat positive
How do you go on
ending,
in life
with that being
after all
that
that,
Xiao
though? Like,
wasn't the only captive woman in that village. Earlier I had mentioned that the Shujo Brother Yiksu account had been banned with its owner having been arrested, and though this was primarily due to the expose on Dong, he would also release another video directly before his ban that showed that Xiao wasn't alone. In that very same small village, just a few houses down, Shujo would discover this.
20多年就这么，20多年就这个样，在地下衣服都不能穿，他就用一个被子，就这样把这个就这么，可可怜的。
Unlike the chained woman's story, this video would garner just a fraction of the attention, but is equally as alarming, as this woman, whose surname is Zong, had too been purchased many years ago by her now husband, and it seems that she is somehow treated even worse than Chao, as she had supposedly been beaten consistently throughout the early years of their relationship, leaving her too with severe mental issues, potentially caused by head trauma.
God,
and to make things even worse, she has lived like this on the floor of that hut butt on her knees, unable to walk or stand, for 20 years, just left there to essentially waste away, unable to even move enough to make it to the bed that sits so tantalizingly close. There's just something so incredibly disturbing about this video in particular, and unfortunately I couldn't find any more information on it, with the only real detail being that the case was quote-unquote under investigation. But sadly I have no idea what ended up happening to Zong since then. But I do hope that they are giving her the proper care and putting measures in place to protect any others like her and Chow, as given that these two cases happened so close to each other in one small village, I have a bad feeling that they aren't the only ones.
Hell no. That's why the police shut off the access to the village.
I want to give a huge shout out to my god tier patron.
That's crazy, chat.